Hi, I'm John Hibbins, and this is the Metaverse Show. You can find us on Roomkey, YouTube, and your favourite podcast provider. This is episode 6. And today I'm joined by my co-host Steve Wright.
Hello.
And my other co-host, Pascal Orbison.
Hello.
And our special guest, Brad Lynch, from the YouTube channel SadlyItsBradley. He says that he's a self-proclaimed idiot that enjoys talking about himself and the future of VR, which is ideal for tonight. Welcome to Brad.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. Right, I've moved chairs now. I have watched a few of your videos on YouTube with scrutiny, I would say, specifically because you've been ripping apart the Valve Index 2, like all the patents and any details you can get, frankly, about the Valve Index 2, and it's quite an interesting series. What gave you the idea to do that?
I guess really I guess it all started with me kind of rebooting my YouTube channel. I kind of took a break, and in the time that I took a break, the industry has changed quite a lot, I would say. In fact, it kind of got to the point where it started driving me a little mad inside. So people started talking about how like PCVR is dying and all this stuff, and I never believed that. Like, even though I wasn't actively making videos, I was still very involved with the PCVR scene. And really what I believe is whatever Valve is doing will always reboost the PCVR ecosystem more than anything. And then I started coming across all these patents and stuff. I'm like, hey, some of this stuff is a very good indication of what they're probably working on, especially when I started seeing patterns to each of these patents that sort of like went with each other and talked as if they're in tandem with each other, as if there's a actual prototype in office there. And it just really just was exciting for me to talk about. And then more people started really wanting more about my research in this, and that's kind of how the series came to be.
Excellent. Why? So you took a break because it was just getting a bit much, and you were into PCVR and were worried about it, or was it just generally that there's a bubble in the streaming world and it was all getting a bit depressing?
Well, when I say I took a break around like 2018. I was doing VR YouTube since 2016, actually, when I got a Vive Pre, and it was really just the actual YouTube. I wasn't really able to, I guess, figure out how to handle my mental health when it came to just YouTube in general, I guess. But over time, I started to sort of figure out how to disconnect myself from the internet, and that allowed me to continue what I'm doing and sort of see what I do on YouTube a bit differently than when I first started.
It's super common that it can be really stressful and difficult doing it. I mean, I don't think most people realize just how much of a job it is. It's hard work behind the scenes, apart from coming up with the ideas, which seems the easy part of it, making that compelling and interesting, and then filming and editing and then promoting and then following, seeing something that you're very proud of bombing or somebody doing really negative, and yeah, it really can affect your psychology, can't it?
Oh, for sure. I mean, like I always say, it's like people think YouTube is one easy job, but it's really like almost five full-time jobs. Like you said, there's like the marketing sector, there's the editing sector, there's the writing sector, and then all of this also comes with the research I have to do before my videos too. It's a lot of work. And then when you do put in a lot of work into a project and it either doesn't pan out or people either just flat out hate it, then it's like, I mean, yeah, it's really hard for you to really figure out the landscape and how to deal with it.
Yeah, well, I think you're doing an excellent job and really appreciate what work you've put into your channel. I also know Steve's a fan, aren't you, Steve?
Yeah, yeah, your channel was actually the first VR channel that I ever followed on YouTube. It was the first one. I think it was the Giant Cop video, which I think is probably like maybe your third video. Was actually the one that because I think around the similar time was basically when I met John for the first time, which was a HTC event in London, and the other Ocean guy, one of the guys from Other Ocean, was there demoing Giant Cop, and yeah, so then I was on YouTube looking for more content, and I saw your video, and the way that you shot those early videos where you weren't talking but you were just sort of doing stuff, were like, yeah, they were the first VR videos I actually watched on YouTube, and yeah, I think you were the first VR channel that I subscribed to.
That's great. That always makes me feel really honored, honestly, whenever I hear stuff like that. It's actually crazy. I like to call those videos like VR miming because I kind of like exaggerated everything I did in those videos
Yeah,
without talking. Um, it still shocks me how well those videos did back in the day because like around the same time the landscape was all like it was all like let's players and stuff with like loud noises, and I kind of hated that. So I did like the complete opposite, but I'm always so glad to hear stuff like that. Thank you.
yeah, yeah. No, it was
Super cool.
it was funny just talking about sort of the way that the way that your videos have changed, and the way that sort of content creators on YouTube have sort of changed their style. A lot of early videos around VR, feel like they were sort of that, because the headsets were so niche, and the content was so different to what everybody was used to in the normal gaming sphere, if you like, of people who are consuming gaming content. That like just the sort of exaggerated, silly videos, but that were also doing a really good job of demonstrating the games that were actually available at the time, rather than just sort of doing let's plays or talking through the videos, the games themselves. It's obviously a bit different now because there's so much more content that's sort of having over like videos where you've got sort of
Mixed reality.
commentary, yeah, mixed reality or commentary of well, more just sort of commentary of what the game is about, like reviews, more traditional reviews. They're sort of the more common stuff, but like just people going in
Yeah.
and
No, I
messing
completely
around.
agree with that. I'm sorry, I just want to like bring up like it was just so difficult back then to really show what VR was like on this 2D format. So you kind of had to exaggerate your movements like crazy and do just silly things with the interactions you were given. But it's funny you brought up mixed reality because that was like something I really got into when that first became possible. I think it was the Fantastic Contraption devs put that together,
Yeah.
and once they did, I pretty much just like I started doing a lot of mixed reality stuff, not only just for my own channel, but like I got to work with a lot of other huge YouTube channels with mixed reality, like Dude Perfect and Smosh Games. They would like fly me out there just so I can help them capture mixed reality because I was back before Live existed, for example, and like when mixed reality just really shot off, I was like so glad I got to be a part
Well,
of that as well.
I specifically want to talk about them because it's Colin Northway and Kimberly Voll did that. And to this day, I hardly see them credited ever. I mean, they literally invented that technology. Amazing. Anyway, they did an amazing job there, didn't they?
Absolutely amazing. Like even if people don't know what Fantastic Contraption is today, like you said, their work is like in almost every VR game now, especially for marketing materials. So it is a shame they don't get much credit.
Well, they were. I mean, Fantastic Contraption was one of the first pre-Vive. I don't know whether the first Vive was called Vive Pre. It wasn't. It was called something else. It was like just the Vive Dev Kit 1 or whatever, right? They were one of the few. There was a very small pool of people, probably 8 people, maybe 10 at maximum, that were asked to create something, and they were sent that early prototype stuff, and they were that first team doing that. Yeah, and obviously had the great idea of putting themselves in the world to show the game well, and yeah, still here today. I'm sure there's 4,000 videos right now of people playing Beat Saber in various paddling pools and costumes, etc. If that's still a thing, I can't keep up with it. Amazing stuff. So yeah, and then Liv went on to do amazing things with that as well. Incredible stuff. Well, that brings us squarely back to Valve, really, doesn't it? They've done a good job for VR, haven't they? They've kept PC VR not only alive but thriving. You only need to look at their store and the amount of new content on it every day. What's your perspective on Valve and their VR world?
I've been really Well, so it's really to begin with, I think it's really amazing how so many people are plugging their Quest 2s into SteamVR in general. I think that really shows how much there is this sort of lust for something more than what Standalone can really provide some people. And the fact that SteamVR, the runtime itself, is like not only just like can run the headsets, but literally are kind of tailored and updated to run the headsets well, is really just like something I love to see in this new medium. We're also seeing Valve pushing for more ideas with open sourcing stuff, and it's really just I think it's just the way to go right now.
Yeah, I mean, OpenXR is obviously the right direction from a development point of view. But it's a nightmare, isn't it, Pascal, having to do multiple SDKs, to say the
It is
least.
indeed.
It is indeed. What's the state of OpenXR today, Pascal?
Well, it's not. It's nearly there, I'd say. Oculus are actually putting some, I know, commitment behind it now. Although I did try and switch to it the other day, and it crashed every time I stopped it in Unity. So I reverted that, and we'll leave it another version too. But yeah, it's the way forward. We don't want to have so many different bits of tech, or so many
Yeah,
different
and
SDKs.
I imagine they'll solve those technical problems as time goes on. I imagine at some point then Quest will become OpenXR native, and then just be runnable as any other OpenXR platform. You'll be able to even emulate it to some extent. In theory, you could run Quest games on a PC. I'm pushing the boat out there, but I can't see why that can't happen.
Yeah. I mean, if nothing else, say what you will about the Facebook ecosystem, the Oculus and Facebook ecosystem of it being a walled garden. If everybody switches over, if the industry in general switches over to open platforms, then it becomes easier to do the types of things that they want to do, i.e., metaverse type content, because at least it's all starting from, there's 1,000 other problems with it around open doors and cross compatibility with different products, but at least everybody's starting from the same base of APIs.
Yeah, I think Valve are doing an amazing job on some sides. On the other sides, the open VR, which is the predecessor to all of that, it was never really that open. I mean, Microsoft did tap into it. That's good, but never really saw a lot of people using it. And supporting their tracking system, there was so little third parties doing that, which is shocking. Honestly, I would have thought there'd be a huge market for peripherals that were tracked by it. Just controllers generally. I mean, there's just a big enough market, but perhaps the market isn't big enough, and the hardware was just looking at it and thinking, well, it's not worth our time developing for a proprietary system. Who knows? But on the Valve Index 2 specifically and the patents, I'm going to quickly do a run through a very fast list. Possible wireless, higher resolution, eye tracking, no more base stations, very high resolution tracking and frame per second of the controllers, etc. Improved headset comfort, haptics in the headset, haptics improvement in the controllers, auto IPD and eyesight correction possibly, and a whole bunch of stuff around hand tracking and external cameras. Wow, that's a lot of stuff. Is it all real?
Yeah,
or are they just making a load of patents?
Well, so the issue with it is it's hard to figure out what everything will make it into the product. Like some of the things like the haptics in the headset, for example, is mentioned sort of just one or two sentences and one or two patents. So and that's more in the more recent patents. So maybe that's just in one prototype they're testing, but it might not make it into the final product. But a lot of the bigger ones I see repeated in every single one are related to the lenses system, the inclusion of OLED, planning for wireless support, and stuff like that. And really, I know we're sort of talking about a lot of people love to talk about wireless and yeah, that's obviously a feature that everyone wants in their headset. But really, I think the one thing that people are going to be really shocked about is the difference of the lens designs that we're going to see probably in the Index 2 more than any other feature.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at PSVR 2 just diverting to that for a second, there was a whole bunch of leaked stuff and rumors about that being also having haptics in the headset. So it seems that that is a future thing. What do you feel about haptics in headsets generally? Have you ever used any haptics in headsets, like the B Haptics headset gasket, or?
Yeah, I actually have that gasket for the headset from Haptics. For me, it's very uncomfortable for my face. Like you just feel those motors on the inside the face pad, and for my face shape in particular, it's not worth wearing for long periods of time. But when I was testing it, it was it did add like a new layer of immersion that I didn't really expect for just really a simple device. Like I was playing Half-Life Alyx with it, and when like a head crab jumped on my face and like my headset is vibrating massively, like yeah, it does add something that you feel is like a great aspect to it. I also saw a lot of apparently some research done by Sony related to these haptics on the faces that apparently it can add some help for motion sickness. Apparently, when you add haptics built in.
Yeah, I have seen that and heard that. Think I heard it at a Facebook conference once where they were talking about other things that are on the radar that can help with sickness, and that it can fake the the system inside your ears as well. I find sometimes I feel like I'm getting haptics out of the Quest because the volume sometimes vibrates your either side of your eyes. You get vibration, so you get like an explosion and you feel this like vibration at the side of your eyes. So I think that's an unusual feeling when it happens as well. Yeah, I think it's gonna be interesting what they're doing there. Steve just brought up the optics. So the interesting thing about the optics here is that they are multivarifocal. They could probably do auto IPDing, but also corrective eyesight. What do we know about this?
So I actually uncovered a very huge story last week or maybe 2 weeks ago. I don't remember. Whereas I know we're talking about how I cover patents, and patents don't necessarily always mean the product or the final product. But due to the fact that I've been researching stuff, I've been able to find out by forcing myself to research more sources, and I found a lawsuit from Valve to the company that is literally developing their next generation lenses. And this lawsuit was last year. And literally, I just do this lawsuit. It basically told me everything I needed to know about how this technology works. I've been learning so much thanks to it. But basically, it's a solid state varifocal lens system. It uses liquid crystal lenses with polarizers and multi-twist retarders to literally do things that we really just we really don't even realize how important these lens systems will be for future VR headsets coming forward. We kind of see things such as, like I said, eyesight correction. It can correct for astigmatism, it can correct for farsightedness, it can correct for nearsightedness with the right applicable settings. It can allow a telecentric lens, which allows people, depending on how far away the lenses are from your face, people should be able to have a very similar FOV depending on that, not even depending on that comfort slider, because the way that these lenses should be able to bend light is more equal around your eyes, which again equals a more balanced FOV.
So
And
are they
of course, there's
bending the light into the shape of your eyeball, essentially? Then is that what you're saying? So you're getting a much
absolutely,
wider field of view.
No, yeah, that's exactly what these lenses are supposed to do. They're literally bending light actively with these liquid crystal lenses and polarizers to either make the scene more immersive with the varifocal sort of depth feeling, or to correct for eyesight for some users.
Wow, that's
That would
quite
be
a
great
thing,
for me.
isn't it? That's quite a thing.
And like, it sounds like when we talk about it, and a lot of people were obviously very skeptical of this when I was reporting on it in my patent video, but like this technology literally exists now. If you go to a website called imagineoptics.com, which is the company that Valve has clearly been working with since 2018, actually. Valve funded this company in 2018 before the Valve Index 1 so that they would build a factory to work on these lenses and manufacture them for just Valve products in general. And literally on their website lists all their technologies that they've been working on, and it's really just all there. It's in full production right now.
Wow. That's incredible stuff. The only thing that I've struggled to believe with is if anybody's ever been to an optician, the machine they put in front of you to test your eyesight and check for this is, I don't know, half a room and attached to something on a wall, etc. It seems quite remarkable to think that that could be shrunk into the front of the headset. But
Well, I think the tools that an optician uses is going to be very different than what these lenses are trying to do. Again, this is mostly to allow the light given off by a OLED micro display to sort of match the user's eyes better, and also pretty much remove any artifacting that displays currently give. For an optician, that's more focused on real life vision, if you really think about it that way. Like, there's a lot less light being beamed at your eyes in real life compared to what a high NIT OLED display can beam at you in a closed environment, which is basically what a VR headset is, right? You're putting it up to your face. You are not getting out any outside light. You're getting literally the exact amount of light that the VR headset developer is sending to your eyes. So they have a lot more control and a lot less variables to have to worry about because of the fact that it's a VR headset.
real time, is it doing some type of foveated sharpness improvement as you're moving your eyes around, etc.?
Oh yeah, I mean, all this technology is only possible because they are going to have eye tracking. Like, eye tracking is actually literally the most stated thing of any other feature for the Valve Index 2 is built-in eye tracking. None of this is possible without eye tracking, just in general. Like, Varifocal relies on this.
So,
They need to see where your eyes are pointing. They need to see how fast your eyes are moving and stuff like that.
so it seems, I mean, I just want to have a quick look for a second. Yeah, it seems that Upload we're talking about. I've got something on screen. PlayStation VR 2 having foveated rendering with eye tracking, essentially. Pretty cool. So it seems like the next gen of hardware, eye tracking will be a pretty built-in important thing. Do you think that's going to extend itself towards the Quest 3?
Oh, absolutely. I've been saying this like a lot this year, especially that any headset that's releasing now at a high price point, especially, and it doesn't have eye tracking built in, is going to look kind of foolish next year. There's already, I mean, like you said, PSVR 2 is going to have eye tracking purely probably for the benefit of foveated rendering, like you say. And even in the Oculus Quest runtime already, it's been this way for months, is there's already a runtime hidden deep within the firmware files that talk about eye and face tracking. So Facebook's already working on the runtime. I bet you they already have a prototype in office of what their next headset's going to
I
be.
think that's actually public. I remember one of the keynotes that they were demonstrating their prototypes of eye tracking, and they were explaining how complicated it was to track the eye because of all sorts of eye shapes and various other things. But I'm pretty sure they can crack that. Yeah, pretty
Oh,
clever.
absolutely. I mean, oh, I'm sorry.
So I think we're all no, I think we're all agreed then that eye tracking, foveated rendering, or dynamic lens shifting is a key feature of the next round of hardware.
I think even if they don't have, if every headset does not have this sort of varifocal lenses built in, we are going to see a huge change next year of the type of lens systems we are seeing. They're all probably going to switch into more pancake-like lens systems we are seeing in patents for the Index 2, even if they don't have full varifocal. And that eliminates a lot of problems. Like, people hate Fresnel lenses, for example, and that's going to be eliminated. And with these new lenses, it also makes devices a lot more compact and lightweight. So you're going to see some form factors that I think people weren't really expecting for like a few more years for some headsets. It's really like next year is going to be insane. I keep saying this on my channel, but next year we're all going to be looking at our headsets we use now when these new headsets announce next year, and we're going to be like, how the heck were we using these bricks on our faces for so long?
So how I mean, eye tracking comes with all the benefits of needing less horsepower to drive less pix. You can drive high resolution in the center of the optics and lower resolution on the outside, which is quite easy to see on actually the early Quests and stuff, because you could see them. It wasn't eye tracking, but you could see that the center of the screen could be higher resolution than the outside, and they can render lower resolution. Not as good as eye tracking would do, but eye tracking would keep that following you around. But obviously another benefit to eye tracking, a big one, is a bit like hand tracking. You know exactly where people are looking. Should we as developers be taking it really serious now and building the next gen of games with eye tracking in as a core feature of whatever we're building?
Oh, I mean, for sure. I already seen a lot of experiments with that. And like really eye tracking is kind of the first mid step to non-invasive BCIs, which I also think is going to be one day another big feature that game developers will be able to dive into, sort of the emotional state of people playing their software or games. And
So that's using health biometric data from the headset itself to change the game dynamically based on that type of data.
yeah, absolutely. Like we already see it in the HP Reverb G2 OmniStep. They had a whole suite of tools and APIs that allowed you to calculate a brain's cognitive load, basically how stressed or how overwhelmed a player was being in a certain situation. And like applying these things to game design would be incredibly immersive. Like I think people don't realize how insane it'll be when these things are actually reaching consumer level.
Is that a challenge to create a horror game that can literally decide whether or not the horror is working and then change the next scene? Because Steve, you're well up for being a guinea pig on that, I
No,
think,
thank
aren't
you.
Just try one thing, and if that's not working, try something else until we crack it.
I'll
Create
watch
a
you play it, John.
profile. Share on the internet.
I'll watch you play it.
That's really cool. Well, let's go back to Valve for a bit longer. What about wireless? Obviously, they've announced the Steam Deck, and I don't think it's any secret because they said something in an interview about basically hinting that the Steam Deck hardware was very useful for their VR plans. Do you think Index 2 will actually be a wireless or standalone? Is there anything there that makes you feel one way or the other?
Well, it's funny because before the Steam Deck came out, I was kind of like this guy wearing a tinfoil hat to a lot of people because I kept saying, hey, Valve is working on a Valve standalone compute unit that would probably work on x86 so you can run the entire SteamVR library, asterisk, asterisk. And people were just saying, you're crazy, you idiot. Like, that's impossible. Like, if it's not ARM, it's not going to happen or whatever. And then the Steam Deck came out, and then all of a sudden, people are, instead of saying that, are just like, well, of course, Brad, of course they're gonna work on this. And well, anyway, yeah, no, I do think that Valve is very interested in having a standalone compute unit. I'm not sure if it's going to be built in or like an accessory. That's something that's been like hinted at in different ways through different patents, either having as an accessory to also upgrade current index users too. So that's a benefit of doing it that way. But not only just for the standalone component, but there's also a lot of patents talking about split rendering between a host PC with the compute unit, so they can sort of pair up the task of rendering different things, which is also a benefit for people that might have sort of lower PCs, because, you know, as these headsets increase resolution and stuff.
I have had the benefit of some 5G demos and some edge computing demos, which I was using our products actually, and they, I mean, to be brutally honest, they were not very good demos. It did not impress me that they could edge compute VR rendering and in the cloud and give you a good performance. Literally, the 5G boxes were in the same room, and I was perceiving the lag easily. But I
Well,
imagine that technology will get better. But do you think that, you know, let's say it's not today, but do you think, you know, the new 6G band, 5G getting really faster? I mean, there's no denying that the time to edge in 5G is super fast. Do you think there is going to be a massive shift in the next few years to providing the resolution from data centers?
Well, so what I was originally talking about, I wasn't even thinking about cloud because generally I am not much of a believer in cloud gaming, not only just for the fact that we're still a long time away from getting the latency that we kind of need from that, but in general, it kind of includes a lot of problems that I kind of have with cloud gaming in terms of like sort of what do you actually own as a consumer when you
It
introduce
changes
that?
so fast. I mean, I can honestly remember once somebody giving me a demo of a video over the internet, and they've got, dual ISDN, and this video quality was like the poorest quality you'd ever seen, and it was like slow, and it kept pausing every so often. It was just like diabolical. But fast forward that, probably 15 years, and we're all streaming Netflix quite happily at 4K native resolution with high quality streamed audio. Don't you think it's just probably inevitable that we'll get to the point where streaming content real time to a headset will just become that's the way it's done?
Well, I mean, it
Especially
definitely
with some
will
of the tech.
become a thing one day. I know a lot of people are very interested in it. I mean, Netflix themselves are interested in sort of getting into the gaming sector and VR sector. They've already announced, but I just, for me, I don't really want to keep up with it because I think it has more connotations in general. Yeah, it'll make things a lot more accessible for people, and that's great, but I just have problems with the idea a little bit.
My personal feeling about the Steam Deck and the Index, or whatever the Index's successor is that I think from the reviews I've seen and from listening to various people talk about the early units and stuff, it is using I think I'm right in saying it's using the original Vega graphics chipset, which is quite long in the tooth at this point. I don't think it's quite as bad as like a Switch or something, but it is getting there. And so I imagine I can see a scenario where Valve don't officially support as a box feature tethering a Steam Deck to an Index, but I can definitely see it being in the same way that they kind of gave the Index users the frunk and the pass-through cameras for whatever use that has been to people. It's like, well, here's a thing that you can technically do. Go and see how you can push it. Because it may turn out that game developers really like the fact they can tether to the Steam Deck, and they can actually optimize the game in the same way that developers are optimizing their Rift, their PC VR games on the Oculus platform for Quest. PC VR developers who are developing for Steam may decide that they want to optimize for the compute being done on the Steam Deck, and then it being just passed through to the Index. I can see, and then in a couple of years' time, because it will have to be a couple of years' time, because nobody's getting a Steam Deck until the end of next year. They will upgrade to a Vega 2 or a Vega 3 or whatever the next thing ends up being, and then that becomes a viable solution for running PC VR level content.
From what I understand, so the Steam Deck runs on a APU called Van Gogh, which uses RDNA2, but also uses Zen 2, which is definitely an older CPU in the scheme of things. I have a few things to talk about this, but let's first go back a little bit to the original question that when I say split rendering compute unit, I generally mean something sort of like what Virtual Desktop has been doing with the Quest 2, and that's been a godsend for a lot of users having
Had a guy
wireless
on the show
PCVR.
last time. It was awesome speaking about all that.
No,
Guy
yeah,
has
I
done
mean,
an
Guy
amazing job.
Godin, I freaking love him. Like he's doing so much of a service for the VR community and PC VR community that I can never compliment his work enough. But also, like, if you think about there's a lot of things happening right now. It kind of kills me that I can't talk about all of them. But like YGig, that was like a pretty like the kind of our first real good introduction to wireless PC VR, high fidelity wireless PC VR back in like I believe it was 2018 when HTC Vive released that, and it was based on YGig 1, which at the time was a standard of Wi-Fi that's been around since like 2012, which is pretty old. Especially like what 6 years later, it finally became a viable product for VR. And recently, YGig 2 was finally certified for use for whoever manufacturer or company want to use it. It like quadruples the amount of data throughput possible for PCVR, for example. And it also works both ways, whereas YGig was only really designed for a downstream. And and one thing, even with YGig 1 or YGig 2, Virtual Desktop does stuff that even YGig 1 doesn't do, and that's because that the Quest 2 does have a standalone compute unit built in, so it's able to handle stuff on the headset, such as reproduction, and have a compositor built in. Whereas the computer that is running sort of the router for these new WiGig Wi-Fi certifications, they can just be in charge with sending the data, and the actual compute unit is like, okay, this is the data, let's compute it to actual useful VR gameplay. So that's a big benefit. Also, to go toward to how Van Gogh runs RDNA 2, another thing that was just leaked is that AMD's next generation APU, which is called Rembrandt, which also runs on RDNA 2 but also uses Zen 3 Plus, is currently in mass production. And a lot of people say, yeah, the Steam Deck's not going to be able to run VR that well without a lot of tweaks. Yeah, but we're already seeing the next generation sort of work being done by AMD for sort of a better chip that we maybe could see in VR with enough work.
Yeah, I mean, RDNA 2 is really fascinating advancement in that technology, and obviously that you know, I think clearly building not just compute cores but machine learning cores in. But I feel like there's another. It's interesting because I was thinking about this the other day. There's with edge computing and hardware that can do things. There's another world of stuff that's slightly in the future and has not been invented yet. I can see a world where if you look at other technologies like edge computing in the web, you know, you can create micro applications that do their particular job and have databases with them that live right at the edge of the tech, that, you know, so you're sort of deploying all this stuff onto the edge of the internet, but you know, you've got core source of truth. And I feel like there's a world where jobs can be put on the headset to run natively on the headset. So you might have eye tracking, or you know, mechanics for the player, or you might have you know, micro stuff running for AI or whatever. But also you could offload other jobs that just produce data sets for you, and so it doesn't need to stream everything. It doesn't need to stream the entire screen. You know, the renderings may be done in one place and the other jobs done elsewhere. And I feel like you can see it with Unity. You have to remind me here, Pascal. Is it DOTS Entity Component System, something like that? I can't remember.
Like that, yeah.
Something like that. But you can see that they're, you know, they are changing the development environments to be these very multi-threaded, you know, object-orientated things. And I can definitely see this world where even audio, for instance, could be, you know, streamed these packets of dots to the headset, and the headset's dealing with your surround audio, like, because it's got an audio chip in it that does that. But other things are done on the net, and distributed computing, a future there, rather than this feels quite old hack, really. So, you know, doing everything on one thing and then sending a screen across just feels not right for some reason.
Yeah, I also want to add, really all to this is there is something in the Valve internal APIs for SteamVR, and it's been like this since February of this year. It's called the Prism API. It's a brand new hardware and software layer that's been in the works for who knows how long. And what's really interesting in general is not only this is like a brand new thing that's going to be added to SteamVR for hardware, but there's only one reference to the sort of the host executable for this new API, and it's only in the Linux build of SteamVR. And that's really interesting because, you know, Valve's Steam Deck runs on Linux, and what I believe will be the standalone compute unit for Index 2 would be running on Linux. So, like, it's just like a lot of different pieces all there into seeing this sort of this, you know, pairing the task up between different devices is really evident to me.
Yeah, so rather than one thing doing the whole job, it could split lots of tasks out. So it reminds me how the PlayStation VR works, actually, because the little black box that goes between PlayStation VR and the hardware was specifically there for the sound, because they'd invented a new binaural sound hardware that could, you know, do everything from surround sound to 7.1 and that box was there specifically because they had needed that chip, and the hardware didn't come with it. And I'm sure it did more as well. I don't want to say it was only doing that, but it feels like these chips can be distributed, and yeah, the headsets themselves can carry these things in them. It sounds very exciting, all of that. So you mentioned OLED earlier. They went away from OLED. Why is it coming back? High resolutions, or just improvement in OLED technology? What's the reason OLED's coming back?
I would say both, but it's also because of the lens system we're talking about. These lens
Mm.
systems sort of allow for to use a new type of OLED micro display. That's actually what's called. They're called OLED micro displays.
So by
And
that,
these,
you're describing a massive increase in resolution on the actual screen surface itself. That
yeah, and not only that is there's been a lot of advances in OLED that also help with the pixel fill rate. So a big issue with OLED, and that's really the only reason that developers stopped using OLED was the screen door effect. And yeah, you can keep bumping up the resolution for displays, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the pixel flow and fill rate is going to be better. You could still have the same amount of space in nanometers as like a 4K between a 5K display.
so
So
you're describing such tiny pixels on an OLED display that basically it can organically produce the shapes that are needed.
yeah, it's really the way that for example, I'm going to discuss a technology used by a company called Imagine. They show off this new type of way that they sort of lay out the different color pixels in more of a uniform line rather than different dots. And really, when you look at what they're doing, and they're also reaching these are tiny displays, first of all, like really small, like size of like quarters or like dimes, for example, in some of these displays, and they're reaching 2K by 2K per eye up to 4K by 4K per eye.
Well, pause
And
for a second. Stop the show. So what you're saying is that currently we've got these, like, well, I don't know, 8-inch screens in front of our headsets, and you're saying that they can get the same sort of resolution that they're giving, but out of like a very, very small, a bit like cameras used to be. They used to be quite big, and now they've shrunk to these tiny things on the back of your phone. Are you saying the same is happening with screen tech?
yes, it's literally happening. Not only are they just getting tiny, but they're also getting up to like brightness nits of up to 5,000 to 10,000, which is very important for VR and AR especially. Because again, the only reason we can like, so yeah, the technology is there. Companies are building these micro displays with OLED, but the thing is magnifying that image efficiently for the user's eyes so it fills up a greater FOV. So while this OLED technologies has existed and it's been making some huge breakthroughs in the past few years, these lens systems I was talking about earlier are the only reason why we're going to start seeing them very
So,
soon in VR and
so
AR headsets.
very small screens presumably need less power, because the big screens
Uh,
must need a lot more power.
so actually, that's sort of one of the things they've made a very recent breakthrough because originally when they were developing these micro displays, they were actually very power hungry. But more recently, they have become a lot more efficient thanks to the work
So
being done by
more
these
efficient
companies.
than the big screens. I mean, presumably they will be just from the pure light point of view.
Theoretically, yes, but they're also these displays have to be attached to silicon as well, so that sort of adds
Ah,
a little bit more of a power
okay, but
resource.
they're super tiny, presumably super light, super
Yes.
small, and the problem is, as we've just discussed, the optics of enlarging that and directing it into the right place on the back of your eye, basically, which is being tackled through proven technologies elsewhere
Yep.
in that there. So those two things together bring a massive difference to the weight of the headset and the quality, and presumably these are hitting high resolution frames per second. Are they getting to
Oh,
120?
absolutely. Some of these displays reach up to 240 hertz already.
Wow. So higher refresh rate, foveated tracking, whether it's and focal point. Wow, that's pretty cool, isn't it? And these are here now and being built, ready for the next the next
Yeah, so this
round.
company in general that we have up on the screen here, this is a company that not only Valve seems to be very interested in, but also Oculus as well. In fact, one of early Oculus's varifocal lens systems used a prototype version of one of these displays in their headset, actually. But no, like this is stuff being developed now. The 2K display has been ready for a couple of years, and this company was advertising that their 4K by 4K displays were their full color versions at least were going to be prototypes full this year. So
I mean, I don't want to
everything's kind of meeting up.
jump too far down the line, but essentially we're saying that these also with optic bending, you could use the majority of it as your focal point, and if we're getting to 4K, there's one per eye.
Yeah, 4K per eye, exactly.
Yeah.
And you also have to think about,
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys tried a Vive Pro 2, but that is a 5K display headset, and if you ever use it, it gives off a ton of heat because these are large displays and they're at just high resolutions. They're not very efficient.
Currently, I am waiting for Foveator because I'm very lucky. I've got state-of-the-art Intel i10K or whatever it's called. I've got a 3090. It's can't drive them well, so I get very irritated with the high-resolution headsets because they require, so much horsepower that even the 3090 can't run them smoothly for your normal game sessions. So they're great for a demonstration. Stick on and show somebody they're standing in a room. You're like, oh, look at that text; it's lovely and clear. But in practice, using them is not really viable yet. But with future technology, you can imagine that you'll get very, very high resolutions and not need as much hardware. So, quite excited for those days. Do you do what I do and end up with buying or obtaining as many headsets that do these clever things? I think I've got a Pimax in a box, and I've got the G2, and then actually can't really use that because of a major flaw in it.
I mean, yeah, I've used pretty much most of the main consumer headsets at this point, at least once. I'll be affiliated with a Thrill Seeker pretty soon, and I've been able to use a lot of the headset that he gets sent, which is even more than me. And I mean, yeah, I've got a lot at my disposal, and I'm constantly excited to try these new things. But at the same time, when I try a lot of these new things, I'm not as my interest doesn't peak as far as I would like to. So that's why it makes me more interested into the near future of VR rather than the products we have, where some companies are sort of behind the curve and just kind of catching up to what Valve and Oculus are doing, for example.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Well, let's move on to the next thing then. One of the things that I saw, you have to clarify this for me, in no more base stations, inside-out tracking likely, but more interestingly, it seems that very high-resolution tracking. By that I mean tracking your controllers at 1,000 plus frames per second. Is that there? Is that something they're working on?
I mean, it seems to be something they're working on. Another thing, it's really fascinating because it seems to be using a new type of frequency of light that the lighthouses don't use. You don't need base stations, but these seem to also work in tandem with base stations if you already have them. So people who have an Index 1, for example, would be able to upgrade to HMD only and still get the actual experience of all their other hardware. But a really interesting thing I want to bring up before I talk about it is this company, Imagine Optics, who I was talking about, who is probably making the lenses for this company. They also have another technology that was patented by Valve. And then I went into one of this company's keynotes, and they talked about how they're able to use polarizers to actually increase the FOV of a lot of these tracking sensors, like dramatically. So the benefit of doing that, for example, let's say as an example, you have a headset with 4 IR sensors, one on each corner. With these new polarizers, apparently they could literally halve the amount of sensors while reaching the same amount of FOV range, which really drives down costs. Because if you're going to have either these new sensors that also work with older lighthouse base stations, or even
why do they need to though? I mean, if these new sensors are so good and better, why base stations? Why do you need them? I mean, I have to say I'm very impressed at progress on the Quest. It will track in the worst of scenarios now, and it tracks on grass well. It tracks, on bad surfaces well. I am super impressed at how they've improved that technology, and it's rock steady. I don't. I mean, I've got my boxes up on the wall. I'm just looking at them now. They're not ideal, are they? And you've got lots of spaces where you can get occluded.
Unfortunately, I'm kind of the wrong person to discuss this with because I love stuff like full body tracking and like all that stuff.
Ah,
So,
but
like for me,
why can't full body tracking? I mean, this is something else I don't understand. I had a conversation once with somebody at Oculus about it. It's like hands are great, but give us the elbow because the headset can also see the elbow. Just track the elbow point, and it's as well as the hands because suddenly you've got top body tracking. And if you can give me my shoulders because it can see that as well, you've got almost full body tracking. And if you can see my knees from in front or behind, that would be ideal as well. You might as well track my feet. Do you think there's a point where it just full body tracking is just there? And why aren't the controllers themselves tracking themselves? I mean, the headset can. Why not put? I mean, there's batteries. I get that, but why can't the handsets just track themselves?
well, I guess that sort of adds a whole other processing that the controllers would need to do themselves, which adds costs for something like a low cost Quest 2.
Sure, but for
I have
what you're
seen,
describing, why not have strapped something to your knee that is tracking itself? You charge up once a day. It's like yeah. I mean, it's just naturally going forwards with OpenXR maybe will help support those things.
well, I have seen some work to what you're talking about of using cameras on the headset to actually see where your feet and sort of estimate or predict the positioning of them. But they're not as accurate as you might think originally, because again, you have a lot of issues with occlusion, especially depending on body types. Like if someone might have a little more pounds than another user, maybe the cameras won't be able to see that user's feet and stuff like that. So there's a lot of issues with it that really these inside out markerless tracking systems just really can't get that fidelity for full body tracking that like a markered or outside in tracking system can. So
Yeah, I mean, we had somebody in the crowd here using our Kinetics, what's it called? Inverse Connect. I can't remember. Pascal, help! Inverse Connect, is it? IK rig.
That's
And they were,
kinematics.
yeah, that's the one. Crossing their arms and behind the back, so even those things can't predict very well. But the slightest bit of helpful information there actually does help us. Because if you did know where the elbow was, suddenly it's a whole new data set for working out possible pose structures. Even if you caught the toe of or foot or knee or something for a period of time, even if it's very short, you can do quite a lot in between. I mean, it might not be perfect, but you can, the last few positions can be worked out to give you an approximation that's way better than what we've got today. And I feel like there's a natural evolution of hand tracking here where that is just data available, and then some clever things are doing something until that gets better.
yeah, I mean, I see it definitely happening. I think full body is actually one of the next steps of immersion after 60OF VR. I'm a big believer of full body tracking in general. So getting more people into it, I think, is very important because it solves a lot of the chicken and egg problems. But a lot of people that I've gotten into full body tracking, got other people in full body tracking, they literally only want to spend their time in VR in full body tracking after they reach that point. So there's value in it.
As somebody who's never done full body tracking, what are the main benefits in terms of immersion and sort of gameplay, I guess, and what's it providing to you?
You remember that first time you put on a 60OF headset and you just moved your hands around and your head around and just felt a part of that world like the first time? It's literally like that feeling all over again, except it just gives you a huge presence factor that you just don't feel again. Like you feel bad. Like for example, I'll use the example of Boneworks, for example, which has a full body IK. But like you just wish in a game like that you had full body tracking where you can actually lift your legs over objects that you're getting stuck on and stuff like that. And if you have these things, you just hate going back to not having it. It's like a curse and a blessing, I should say.
Interesting stuff. It's all the big thing today. I mean, today's a good day to talk about that because Spaceflight Trainer's been released about an hour ago. Bing went live. I congratulated Chris and Dirk already on it because they're getting a lot of good press around that. So for a lot of people, that will be their first running around a field, real true presence VR, which again, it's hard to go back from once you've done that once or twice.
Yeah, it's kind of a shame that room scale VR has sort of Well, it's just I remember in 2016 room scale VR, everyone was mentioning those words like on Reddit and forums, like, "Hey, this is amazing. This is the reason to buy the Vive over the Oculus Rifts, for example." But as time went on and VR has become more consumer friendly, which of course makes sense. Not everyone has a lot of huge spaces to walk through. It's great to see Space Pirate Arena really rekindle that love for room scale because really, I made a video months ago about kind of complaining about how the joystick has become the true locomotion method for VR, whereas if you go into Space Pirate Arena and just run around with your full body and full presence, it's so exhilarating for your brain and body.
I mean, I think if
Yes.
nothing else, that's going to have to be the reason why anything that Valve puts out post Index has got to be wireless, because I think that the ubiquity, is that the right word? Because how commonplace the Quest 2 is becoming, and the fact that it's wireless first, but you can tether it to a computer so that you can effectively use it as a wired for high fidelity games. That I know that Valve just do things because they're Valve and they don't really worry too much about, they've got enough money and enough sort of backing by the community that they don't worry too much about whether or not something's necessarily going to be a great success. But I think in order to be in any way competitive, they're going to have to be wireless. I think that's pretty much the biggest given of the next headset.
Yeah, I think I mean, I agree with that. I know that Valve has been waiting for WiGig 2 to certify. They've had patents like for years of when WiGig 2 was certified, they would use it in their current index to make it wireless. They promised it at the index launch, actually. Gabe Newell even said that we have the wireless solution solved. We just gotta wait for something. Now that's out. But like really, like you said, I think the value of people call it like standalone headsets, but I really think there's a lot of value in what I like to call hybrid headsets. The ability to use it whatever way you want. Standalone, wireless tethered to a PC, or wired tethered to a PC for higher fidelity. I think having this all-in-one solution really just is the best method going forward for the VR industry.
Yeah, because I mean, it's obvious that Valve are in the premium VR space. Their headset bundle is £1,000, something like that. Slightly less than that, I think, but it's a lot of money. Yeah, and obviously, it sounds like from the hard way of describing, it's likely that the Index 2 would also be a premium headset.
Oh yeah, I don't expect it to compete at all. Like price
Yeah,
wise with
and I
Quest
don't think
2.
it
I've been
needs
saying
to.
a
I
lot of
think
it.
there's an enormous excited market of people. I mean, I think we probably focus too much on numbers, like we talk about 10 million headsets or 5 million headsets or whatever. The fact is, they have sold a premium headset that has been out of stock the majority of its lifetime. They are probably making good profit on it. There's certainly the controllers are probably making profit on. Definitely the base stations. They aren't. If you component break down the cost of those, they're making profit on it, and probably the headset itself. It's probably a very high profit device compared to the Quest 2, which probably is quite a low profit device.
I mean, yeah, I mean, like you said, we always see journalism websites sort of talk about how many connected headsets there are on Steam, and yeah, Quest 2 obviously overwhelmingly exceeds that. But next in line, it's Index. $1,000 headset still holds 16% of the SteamVR connected headsets share. That's pretty. That's pretty telling. Like you said, of like there is a market for people that want enthusiast grade hardware, as long as it actually does what people want it to do.
Yeah, and I'm always very impressed with Steam's performance in sales as well. It's a strong platform. Especially with its sales cycles and the way it's got really good exposure algorithms, so it puts the right games in front of the right people. It's a very strong performing platform. So they are doing well out of taking their currently 30%, but 30% of the value of that. So they're probably making good money out of that, including their own games and IP. So it's quite exciting. I want to go back to the resolution of the tracking. One of my bugbears really is that throwing in VR is done so badly by a lot of developers. Yes, I'm looking at you, the person that I can't throw things in, and that's probably phasmophobia at the moment. But and there was a little tiny section of the if you've played the Half-Life Alyx dev commentary, there's a little tiny section where they literally tell you how it's done, and they look at the last 8 frames or so and interpolate the direction, do some slurping on it, and then say, well, the arm was aiming this way in the last 8 frames, so thus I am going to throw the thing in this direction with this much force. Things like high resolution tracking for Beat Saber, generally Beat games, and for throwing and general, sword play, etc., is going to make an enormous difference, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I mean, it definitely adds. It definitely does add to it. I remember when they had to increase I think they had to increase the refresh rate for Beat Saber players. I remember the update. They even said for that firmware update that they had to upgrade to inhuman levels in this. It was in the blog post. I remember it was just a funny little tidbit. But more tracking data does.
Do this.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I thought that was hilarious. But yeah, like you said, not only is it good for that, but also a lot of their patents talk about how when you have higher refresh rate tracking like this, you can also have better, more accurate prediction systems to sort of illuminate pixels or render things ahead of time as well.
I think it's a bit like what we were talking about with Give Us an Elbow. It's like, give us more accurate frames per second on the tracking, and we can do clever things and use algorithms to work out intention. But the more of that resolution you give us, the more accurate our algorithms are going to be, and the more well presented our games will be fundamentally. So yeah, really exciting stuff. I have to talk about it. Apple and VR. They have their next event next week. They announced it. Was it yesterday, Steve? They announced it with a very cool.
It was Tuesday.
Yesterday. Could you bring it up on the screen? The little video of the AR thing. Video of the AR thing. So they had a little. If you go to the front on your phone, if you've got an Apple phone, I think it works fine. I haven't used it on Android. You press on the keynote, it comes up with an AR thing where you've got like an Apple thing that you can. I did it in my kitchen with my kids. They loved it. I dragged this big Apple sign up, and you can see this new world on the other side of it. And we all walked through it together, out the other side in the kitchen, turned around, and you could see the kitchen through this other world. It's so cool, right? They've not got any VR or AR hardware yet, but it's clear they've worked on it for many, many years. What's your feelings about Apple and VR?
I know they got some very capable people. I knew one guy in particular that used to work on VR hardware at Valve, and he moved at Apple. So I know they've been working on this for a while. It's been showing not only just their software side on their phones with just preparing all the runtimes and everything. They're going to be a huge player. That being said, I don't really follow them myself, even which I really should, but there's only so much time in the day to follow different companies.
We've talked about a lot of cool things tonight, but today, right now, as we stand, they have one of the few manufacturers, well, if not the only manufacturer in the world to do really reliable 5 nanomillimeter or nano whatever's hardware with the M1 chip that's super cool chip that we know they're building a new chip. There's loads of rumors out here for their headsets. We know that they've got their own camera technology. We know that they've got their own battery stuff. We know that they've got their own screen technology and micro LED screens. We know that they are. I mean, if anybody could pull this off, they've got full control over their entire ecosystem to do it. Whereas you've described, Valve are having to go to a third party, and Oculus don't have their own hardware, companies and stuff. It's frustrating watching it and waiting for them to announce something, isn't it?
I mean, it's gonna be a great talking point whenever they do announce something. I know I'm gonna probably start covering whatever hardware they release, because it's I mean, like you said, it's such a big player, and it's been years in the making, and it's really just it still kind of warps my mind a little bit that Apple is actually entering this in really a pretty early stage for most than most Apple things. Usually they
Well, I
always
don't
seem
know
to.
about that. I mean, I'm looking. I mean, they're probably going to announce the. I don't know, Steve. Are you going to buy this? The new iWatch 7. I think you're a few behind now. Is this on your bucket list?
I'm on a Series 2, so yeah, I'm absolutely getting a new one.
So he's excited for the new watch. But let's face it, right? The iWatch 1, I can remember purchasing it. Quite a neat device, but honestly, looking back on it, quite a lot of rubbish. My latest, I don't know what I've got, a 5 or whatever. I played golf the other day. It was embarrassing. Don't ask me about that. But I could pull up on my watch how far the next hole was, a 3D view of the whole environment, and it would connect to my phone and keep all my scores and detect my swing on it, and it had my heart rate and everything all plugged into the health and stuff. This stuff is phenomenal now, right? And they're just about to announce a slightly bigger version, clever version. Sure, it's going to do more health. Aren't Apple geniuses? I mean, arguably they've got the best AR platform in the. I mean, you commented the other day, didn't you, Steve? It's so stable now. It is rock stable, and it's casting shadows correctly, and it's completely believable, the objects in the room. They've been building that for what? I mean, 6 versions of iOS has got that
Yeah.
in, maybe something like that. So it's like it's
yeah.
not. It wouldn't surprise me that they get something out and start building on that platform, and it's a version 1 headset. Why
I
not?
think, yeah, I think that just talking about AR specifically, just for a second, I think that there may be another situation with AR that there was with VR with Google Daydream, and the Gear VR headsets with AR, because Apple's AR solution admittedly it's in the phone, and so you have to hold the phone. It's a bit, and that's awkward to have to hold a phone up and like use it that way. But their SLAM technology is amazing, and their LiDAR technology for doing scanning,
And all
and
of
the apps
that, all
you
of
can do.
that just plugs
Yeah.
into the headset, right? None of that is.
Yeah, but compared to the thing that Facebook have announced today that they're calling, well, that they are not calling, I don't think they're necessarily calling it an AR device, but they're definitely touting it, even if they're not saying the words, as an AR device. And really all it is the Snap glasses that came out in 2017. And so I'm just, from AR's perspective, it's like, is it not going to? I'm slightly concerned that we're going to end up in this situation where it's like a segmented understanding of what AR is from the general consuming
I think
population.
what they've done is starting to record the world. But again, Apple and Microsoft are so far ahead on Facebook on this. I
Yeah,
don't see how they can catch up. I mean,
yeah,
Apple have been recording. I mean, you only see their map seeker sphere. They have been recording that data, actively recording the world for so long now, and building it up as a map of internal spaces and external spaces. Exactly the same for Microsoft. Their entire Azure mapping system that they've been building is very open and public. Is literally about mapping the world inside and outside. And if Facebook don't own the phone, you're not going to carry a headset around. Frankly, you're already carrying around devices that map where you are. Put a headset on, and suddenly you're in a different world or experiencing something new, etc. It's the ecosystem that they've built is so strong
I
that I
do.
don't see.
Yeah, I do sometimes wonder whether or not Facebook, whether or not Apple will even just bypass VR, not bypass, but skip VR completely and just go straight to just AR, or even to a
I don't
solution
think
that,
AR pass
or
through's
even
honestly
to
got a future,
even to a
Steve.
solution that where you can slide it between the two.
There
I
are
mean, we're talking
so
about
no,
we're talking about
there are
polarizing
so.
pancake polarizing. Just as a thought, we're talking about pancake polarizing lenses. I mean, one
I
of the
think they should
features of
give
that
up
kind of thing is
trying to do that. They should give up. It's many years in development. It's blurry at the edges. You get all sorts of overlay issues. You've got like depth. It's like there's so many issues with it. Tiny little postage stamp view of the world. But on the other side, you've got a £300 headset that you can put on your head and walk around your house in. It's black and white, and it's not particularly fast or stable, but it's perfectly good at mapping the world. You double tap on the side, and you're suddenly into the world, right? I just think that LiDAR and real-time meshing and the technology to do what's it called, photoscoping and all that is just here, right? And it just, if they get that right, why, and it's high. We've just talked about very high resolution, eye tracking optics, and all the other things that add up. Why bother with the pass through? Why not just
Because I think that
render the camera in your headset?
Because I think fundamentally people, and we've had a conversation about this before. People are not going to want to walk around with a headset on their head that looks like that on the screen. They're not going to want to walk around with a Quest or a Vive or Apple's like opaque headset on their head. They're just what they want to wear glasses. Like I think that
for some people,
I think that there is a, and I think that the vast majority of consumers, that was what they would want. And Apple fundamentally is a lifestyle brand, and I think that the consumers of Apple devices probably double down on not wanting to. They want to look stylish. Apple devices are all about looking stylish, and I don't think current headsets and the way that they're designed, even if they turn them into a very thin device form factor, fundamentally, unless they end up looking like Doc Brown's glasses from Back to the Future 2.
I mean, if I could paint a picture, there's lots of people that wear Ray-Bans. We're talking about Ray-Bans. Their Ray-Bans are completely black. I cannot see their eyes, right? Perfectly normal. If that was a screen and they're watching videos and stuff, but it's got passed through to the world, all good, right?
Yeah, that's the kind of form factor that I'm describing, though. Yeah, that is the kind of form factor that I'm describing as acceptable, and I don't know how you would do that for a VR. I don't know. Maybe you're now compelling me to think that actually maybe that is what they're going to do.
What do you think, Brad?
And
I
lost
think
you
the
there.
lens technology we were talking about earlier actually does have a huge sort of reliability for this kind of technology that we're talking about, even for AR. I do agree that Apple is a fashion company, and they will probably market this thing as sort of a fashion device, no matter what it is. They're very good at that, and like the power of the ecosystem you're all talking about it's totally true. Like this thing will sell even if people are not interested, because it's just one more thing that people, especially in Silicon Valley, can just have a part of the Apple ecosystem.
There'll be two cool things on it, and people just want to check it out.
Absolutely.
That's what they're
and
good
like,
at, isn't it? It's like
yeah,
it used to be
it's
Angry
what they're
Birds.
very
It'll
good at.
be the next thing, whatever it is. Yeah. So, I mean, talking about that, you started this entire show off by saying, you know, PC VR is dead was a bad thing to say, and VR is dead. How does that evolve? How do we evolve now into a use case that is beyond gaming and, you know, interactive consumption, basically? What is business going to be the next thing? Is it going to happen?
I think business will eventually happen. I mean, it is happening. It's been happening. I don't know if Facebook is going to do that well in that sector. They keep having very strange mixed messaging to the business sector. Like, for example, their workrooms thing that they just announced a couple weeks ago. If you are a Facebook business user, you can't even access that yet, which means you need a Facebook account. And businesses do not want to tie their business to a Facebook account, like for stuff like that. That being said, like there is a ton of value in making users, especially in this post-COVID world where working from home is a thing. I think a lot of these problems with the actual use of VR and AR in business will be sort of made more common when form factors get more reliable for these users, because again, no one wants to put on bricks, even if you're working who knows how long hours a day, or even just sitting in a meeting like this. It's just not comfortable. But moving past gaming, I think gaming's always going to be the thing that pushes innovation, and then businesses are going to slowly catch on to what works in the gaming sector, and it's just going to evolve from there.
Have you used the Vario VR3 yet?
We actually got an XR3 at my office, but I haven't been able to use it yet.
Oh. I'm told it's very high resolution and pretty cool. I think mainly right now I'm thinking consumer-wise, it's quite exciting. There's lots of games coming out. There's new hardware left, right, and centre. It's all good for us consumers. I mean, us people that have been following VR for years, loving this. Like you say, next year is going to be really cool. The year after, even cooler. The let's talk about PSVR 2 for a bit. Are they getting that right? Is that the right thing for them?
I mean, from what I hear, they put a lot of R&D into PSVR 2, so I think whatever they do announce, it's going to absolutely be detrimental. Well, okay, I shouldn't say it that way. It's going to literally be a huge player for the gaming sector of VR. Like I think Oculus and Facebook right now are probably honestly terrified for next year because of that. I think that's why they started buying up all these VR studios.
Yeah, they're very open about PSVR 2's strategy of being top quality IP, top quality games, hybrid, like it just works on both. So there's an Iron Man game that happens to have VR support, etc. What's your thoughts there?
I mean, I generally have the belief that usually games that are built for VR are just going to be way better. That being said,
I don't think they're not going to have VR only games. I mean, I think they absolutely will, but I think they're trying. I think it's a strategy of gaining main audience. So you've already got the game. You buy it because you want the game, right? You buy the latest, I don't know, Call of Duty or whatever. It just happens to be tagged on with VR support. So it just converts you easy because I've got to check that out in VR, haven't I?
I think it will work great for adoption. Again, I really don't even think that it's going to be that hard for them to sell these PSVR 2 units. Like even if every AAA game that they announce for non-VR does have VR, I think if they even had some really enticing VR titles only, they would still sell a lot.
You've made it sound old before it's released. I mean, it's not going to be out for at least another year, right? You've made it sound like, well, they should have a lighter weight form factor, and they should have these very high resolution, lightweight screens, and
I think
resolution.
They will.
Wow. Okay.
I think the thing is that like the PSVR 2 specs came out a while ago, didn't they? And so it now does, based on everything else that's come out over the last few weeks and a couple of months, it does feel a little bit like old news almost. And the fact that it's such a huge gap between them saying, yes, we're working on this, and here is the actual official announcement and details of the device, especially given how long ago it was that PSVR 1 came out compared to the life cycle of the update cycle of all the other HMDs. I mean, pretty much everybody that I know who has or had a PSVR 1 traded it in, sold it, replaced it with a Quest 2 because they liked the experience of playing VR games from PSVR 1 and they were console-based players, but just wanted something better, and Sony wasn't offering them anything.
I mean, I just think I didn't mean to make the new headset sound old. Like, I mean, the rumors were saying
I don't think you did it on purpose. I just think that technology is so cool, and then PSVR 2 actually sounds like, well, it's got favorited rendering, but none of the rest of it.
No, I mean it's going to be like the biggest consumer headset. I'm sure the price point's gonna be right. It's gonna be massively adopted by a lot of people. It's gonna have eye tracking, which solves a lot of the problems with the chicken and egg problem that eye tracking usually companies were worried about before. And again, the rumors talk about it being like 2K per eye or 4K altogether with OLED. And I guarantee that OLED is not the OLED that we all think with the stream door effect. It's all the new OLED stuff that we've been talking about earlier.
So actually, it might incorporate quite a lot of this new technology into the form factor, and it's just, yeah, that's great. I'm going to do one of those moments where we do the Pythoria and the Nostradamus and the Douglas Holmes, and I said all these names before, the Baba Vanga being the strangest one. Let's predict the Quest 3. Do you want to have a stab at it, Bradley?
I think it'll have eye tracking and maybe face tracking as well, similar to Deca Gear. I think it will have RGB pass-through because it's very beneficial to make their pass-through better because, I mean, like you said earlier, their current pass-through honestly sucks. No one wants to do their AR pass-through stuff with the black and white, low-resolution IR cameras. I think really with those few things alone is going to add a lot to what they currently have in general.
And the rest of it just an upgrade.
I mean, I mean, yeah, there might be some upgrades. They might actually. Well, oh, I know they're switching to new lenses. Actually, they might not be like varifocal lenses, but I know they're gonna definitely be using similar lenses to the PSVR 2. They have the same manufacturer, in fact, which those lenses are supposed to go in mass production early next year as well. So new lenses, which will mean greater FOV from what they currently have, which is pretty, pretty old standard FOV that we've had a lot of headsets a few years ago. So, but I think a lot of stuff, we're gonna see a lot more OLED next year. We're gonna see a lot more pancake lenses with non-Fresnel and some of the other stuff I said too for the Quest 2 Pro or whatever they call it.
That's really cool. And HTC, what do we think? Are they now lost to the game, or do you think they can pull it back straight?
No, I think HTC is constantly in catch-up mode. I saw that pretty well with their HTC Vive Pro 2. The fact that they did not include eye tracking was kind of devastating to me. I think a lot of people are excited about it now, but even when I tried the headset, for what it was, I was not excited about it. I even kind of gave it sort of a do not buy review because next year it's just passe. It's going to be mega passe, especially for the price point. I will say their Vive Focus 3 though, a lot of R&D was put into that, and I will say all the problems I had with the Vive Pro 2 right away, I did not have with the Vive Focus 3. But until they reach a better price point that's not a business consumer, it's not even really worth talking about HTC right now.
She's quite sad. They were a big player at one point.
Yeah, no, they were. I think they were. I hate to say it, but I think a lot of the reasons they were a big player is because they were a very useful manufacturer for Valve. But everything they sort of did after that, that cooperation went sour or whatever happened in the background, HTC just seemingly is constantly in catch-up mode, like with everything they're doing. They're advertising the resolution for the new Vive Pro 2, but like as someone who's tried it, it's a very hot headset to wear. It's using the same form factor because they pretty much used all the R&D in the Vive Focus 3 and just kind of stuffed it into the old Vive Pro casing, which added a lot of problems. So yeah.
And then in big news, Snapchat buying Pico.
TikTok,
that's it, not Snapchat. How I got the wrong way around there. Snapchat's Facebook, isn't it? Yeah, TikTok. And I also read that TikTok is now overtaken YouTube viewing time. Is that true?
Surprising at all. My wife literally sits on
crazy is that?
Hours a day.
Hours and hours. Apparently a thing. But yes, Pico and TikTok becoming a force. What do you think TikTok's play is there?
It's gonna be they're gonna pretty much mirror what Facebook is doing in the VR sector. I guarantee. I'm not happy about it at all. But whatever. I'm just a small voice, and TikTok, even just taking over YouTube watch time is also devastating in my opinion. I don't really like the idea of focusing on short form content. I think it just does not promote human growth, or like
it honestly drives me crazy. My 15-year-old, it's the first port of call that I'm just going to watch some stuff on TikTok, but so many of those videos are peddling information that is questionable or information that is explicitly targeted to make the person feel clever so that they show it to their friend. And it's like, it just from a psychology point of view, I can see why it's flying off the door, but from a humanist point of view, it's scary.
I just don't. As someone who's been like trying to do YouTube shorts and making them educational in the 1 minute of time that I can, I just think I think the industry focusing towards short form content is bad for human mental health and growth in the long run.
I can't do anything but agree with that. But you've not thought about doing a 10-second dance in front of the camera with a Quest 3 attend thing on your head then?
I've done it, but with my virtual avatar, and I've only done it once, so we're going to leave it at that.
Fair enough. And then Microsoft, have we got any opinions there?
Microsoft, I really hope that they get back in. Like, they did the mixed reality stuff. They had the HoloLens. Like, they have very talented engineers all over the place. They just they kind of have the Google effect a little bit, where they make something really cool and then they just like give up like halfway through it, which is a
Yeah,
real shame because like they would be a very, I mean, the HP Reverb still runs on Windows Mixed Reality, and if that was a little bit better and like had better tracking, it would be beautiful for the PCVR ecosystem alone.
and then I don't think I've missed that many, but Star VR and Pimax and all of those type of. I mean, is there any more there that are worth keeping on our radar?
I think we should keep on our eye. Today, I think they're called Lynx VR. Just had their showcase of their mixed reality headset. There's also Deca Gear to keep an eye on, and there's some other companies that are probably going to be evangelized very soon that we can't talk about. But like, there's a lot of competition in the VR space from companies that we don't really expect it from, and I think that really shows the true health of VR more than anything.
Yeah, what surprises me constantly is the stability of games growth in the VR space. Winlands, for instance, is so old now; it's nearly 7 years old or something, and yet it's still strong. Sells every month. It's not really it's pretty consistent. Goes up and down on sale times, but it still sells, still does well. Still people still like playing it, and it's fascinating to see that the growth of the industry is sustaining the growth of old hard software. Really, it shows that we're doubling year on year, and the industry is doing well. That's pretty cool, isn't it?
I mean, I always talk about, I say this a lot on my channel. A lot of people disagree with me, but I'm a very opinionated person, so that's common. But I always say that when VR hardware gets better, the VR software we already have gets better.
Gets better.
Like,
You're right.
yeah, like when I first got my Index One, I went back and played all the old games I played on my Vive the past couple years before that. And I know I felt like I was playing these games that I've had in my library for years, but I felt like I was more close to playing them the way that they were meant to be played, if that makes sense. And I think that
Yeah.
with each hardware update, it's going to be like that. So games like Windlands and yours just only get better without even updates, just hardware updates in
Just
general.
higher resolution, just that much more smooth, that much better. I look forward to the day that the HD remastered editors version or whatever versions of VR games that were classic come out on these incredible resolution, crazy headsets in the future. It's gonna be quite a strange world, but I suppose I feel
Look
a
forward
bit
to the
like
ray
that's already
traced
happened.
version of Windlands.
Yeah. Well, Winlands does. I mean, it looks great on the Quest 2. It's it's a perfect port. It's high res. It's used to full resolution and stuff. But fundamentally, yeah. I mean, at some point, it's just it looks like classic games. You're stretching the pixels out, or at least you're make it. It's not ideally set up for it. Yeah, it's quite interesting what it does there. You mentioned to me Thrill Seeker Group. Do you want to talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, so Thrillseeker is starting a huge company, a media group, and I will be pretty much his partner content creator in this company. You'll probably hear about that very soon as we're raising money, but we just really want to make a big, basically a big platform where a bunch of content creators and like social VR events and a lot of we want to do so much stuff for VR that really hasn't been done before, and I'm really happy to be a part of it. It's gonna be just it's gonna be good. We're gonna make VR as look as good as we can is basically our goal in these coming years that we're working together on this. So yeah.
So, I mean, from the outside looking in, that's a group of really talented people working together, really helping each other.
I mean, it's literally I'll be in office with Thrillseeker and like we have our own events coordinator for social VR events because we believe there's a huge value in doing VR events for people that are getting into VR and
So by
there's
that, do
just
you mean like you go to PAX today, you want to run shows like that are dedicated for VR?
I would say more so like I don't know if you've been to Virtual Market and VR Chat, but stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
We want to do
Yes, yeah.
more stuff like that. Like literally have a platform for to help companies or really communities just pull together these amazing events that the VR community can feel more together in ways that we just really haven't had up until this point. So
Really cool. Well, the best of luck with that. I hope that goes really well. We have gone over by half an hour, which is not unusual for this show, but I've got one last topic that I think we can all speak about. Matrix 4. That was a pretty cool trailer, wasn't it?
it was pretty neat. I like Matrix, but I never was like a huge fan of it. I guess I like I don't know. It's good, exciting. It'll be very interesting to see how Hollywood takes it. Like they've seemed to be pretty obsessed with taking older series and then bringing them back, and a lot of them not really working out. But I hope this one does. So
I read today that you know the What is the Matrix website, which occurred to me the other day that website has been around since the original Matrix films, because I remember it. There was 180,000 variants of that teaser video.
Yeah, do you know what? That's super clever. It told you your actual time.
The video was injecting your actual time, but also the little clips in the video were changing every time you watched it. And apparently there's 180,000 possible combinations of those clips, which I thought was really cool. I did watch the trailer earlier. I thought it was interesting. It does feel a little bit like it might be... I hope that other people have said that it feels like it might be a little bit like a remake. I hope that's a bit of a red herring, because I would like them to not just reboot stuff. Keanu Reeves has done interviews in the past where he said that they're not going back in time, so it's not like they're revisiting the old storyline and doing anything that would be sort of considered a reboot or whatever. But I don't know. I do know that there's people complaining about the fact that Lawrence Fishburne, well, as people complain about everything, but people just saying that Lawrence Fishburne and Hugo Weaving aren't in it, and maybe they actually are. But both of those actors have also gone on record as saying that they're not in it. So yeah,
it's going to be
I think it's weird that there's no Matrix VR game.
That is weird.
Feels like a perfect fit to me.
Well, if anybody's listening from whatever studio's doing that and wants a Matrix 4 VR game making, contact us. I'll be happy to look at that IP agreement, and I'd be very interested in making a Matrix game. So just plug ourselves there. It looks cool, and it wasn't really on my radar, I have to be honest. I sort of like, when I first heard about Matrix 4, I was like, well, yeah, all right, obvious cash in. But it's increased on my radar based on these trailers to the point where I'm actually really looking forward to watching it, because it has definitely modernized. They're using new technologies, right? And the original ones were quite impressive, so it's good to see it. And I can't help but feel that there's some truth that that John Wick was actually in the Matrix, and that could be a real thing. Which, why not? And the older I'm getting, the more plausible it is that we're in an alternative reality. I'm pretty sure right now that I'm falling more towards that than I am towards the opposite.
I was thinking about this in the car yesterday morning, because you keep saying it, and I was thinking, if I was in a simulation, why would somebody else in the simulation keep telling me that I'm in a simulation? Doesn't make any sense to me. Like, if I was in a simulation, it'd just be me coming to the realization. Everybody else would be oblivious to it.
How about you, Brad? Are you one side or the other? Do you think we're in a simulation, or we're just in some random universe?
I guess I try not to think about it because these things make my brain explode. So I don't know.
Pascal, I know you still believe that the people landed on the moon. So
they did land on the moon.
I just thought I'd start one off. What do you think about the whole "are we in the Matrix" question?
I think we are not, in the sense that we would understand. It involves too much kind of pre-thought, but then when you start thinking about why is the universe the way it is, that's quite mind-blowing. So I think that's as far as our brains can go, really.
Yeah. Well, we'll leave it there then. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about, Brad, before we finish this show?
I just want to have a shout out to all the open source VR communities that are doing a lot of cool DIY stuff. There's really an insane amount, and it's really been opening my eyes more to why PC VR in general always have that superpower of being able to have people all over the world make just really cool things to solve the problems instead of waiting for companies to sort of implement it. So like stuff like Open the Gloves, Slime VR, just a lot of cool DIY projects. Thank you for your work out there, and just keep on doing it. And I love your stuff, everyone.
Here, here. If it wasn't for the small guys, VR wouldn't be where we are today, and the small guys are doing epic stuff. I read something today that said we're not to call them garage developers anymore. It's more like living room developers. Quite amusing. Well, let's finish the show there then. Thank you very much for joining us today, Brad. Thank you very much indeed. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
This was great. I love having a place to just sort of scream my madness. So thank you for giving me that stage to do it.
Brilliant. We're going to hang around for a little bit afterwards and say hello to the crowd. Thank you for turning up, everybody. And we'll stay around and have a little chat. How can people find you, bro?
Just go to bradsmells.com. It has all my links there.
Cool, and please do watch Brad's videos. They are super entertaining, and he is funny to boot. And you follow me on at Hibbins, and thank you to Pascal and Steve for being co-hosts today. Much appreciated. Lots of love. You can find us on Roomkey, YouTube, and your favorite podcast provider. And you can subscribe to those and keep us on your radar. If you want to host your own meeting or podcast or do anything virtual, then Roomkey is a cool place to do that. It's free and easy to get going, and automatically export streams for you to file or direct to YouTube or Twitch, etc. You can also find other shows like this one to enjoy. Thanks for joining us on the Metaverse show, and have a great week, and we'll see you on the next one.